Hello there. Hi. So we are live here on the EPP Group Instagram page. I hope that some of you will be able to join us. This is going to be a discussion about the Istanbul Convention. Now, that is a convention that was signed 10 years ago today on the 11th of May, and it is to protect women from domestic violence, fundamentally. Now, we have people joining us, and I'm going to join them just because people are joining. I'm going to get through, and I'm going to bring in our guests immediately so I don't lose them. Daniele Cangemi, who is from the Council of Europe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Perhaps you can I'll just let you do it. If you can explain to our viewers here on our Instagram Live who you are, where you are, and what you do.
Thank you very much. Yes, Jack, thanks a lot. My name is Daniele Cangemi. I am based in Strasbourg currently, and I'm the head of the Human Dignity and Gender Equality Department of the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe is the organization which, under the aegis of which the Istanbul Convention has been elaborated and adopted, and which carries out also the follow-up to the monitoring of this convention. So we are those who are in these days very busy in celebrating different contexts and different moments. This exciting 10th anniversary.
Perfect. Thank you, Daniele, for that introduction. While I was fiddling with my phone to join him, I'll start with you, Francis Fitzgerald, MEP. Thank you so much for joining us, an EPP Group MEP. Perhaps I can just ask you, just quickly before we speak to Karen, to introduce yourself to the viewers that are joining us on this Instagram Live.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Francis Fitzgerald. I'm MEP for Dublin City and County in the Parliament since 2019. And I am the coordinator for the EPP Group on the FEMM committee, the Women's Committee.
And I'll also introduce Karen Vandekerckhove as well, who's from the European Commission. Perhaps you can just introduce yourself as well.
Yes, hello to everybody. My name is Karen, indeed, and I'm the head of unit of the Gender Equality Unit. So we are in charge of implementing the gender equality strategy, including all the measures on violence against women and domestic violence.
Perfect. So also, it's probably worth me introducing myself as well. I didn't do so at the beginning. My name is Jack Parrack. I'm a broadcaster and a journalist based here in Brussels. So this is my first attempt at a four-way Instagram Live, and I had a lot of trepidation about this. So it's holding. We're all here. Everything is looking great. So, as I said at the beginning, we're here to talk about the Istanbul Convention, 10 years of this convention that is there to protect lives. We had a short introduction from Daniele there as well, but perhaps I can turn to you, Karen, to just start on what this convention means. How does it protect women from domestic and intimate violence? What violence? What's it been doing over the last 10 years?
Yes, thank you. It was addressed to me, the question?
Yes.
Sorry,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the convention really for us, the convention provides like a gold standard, as we call it, in the protection against domestic violence and violence against women more generally. I would say it's a real encompassing framework, which we have seen nowhere before. It's really the first of such frameworks at international level to tackle the matter. And it really offers, I would say, like a kind of a lifeline for women and girls, because it ensures that in those states that are parties to this convention, victims of violence, gender-based violence and domestic violence, have access to shelters, to telephone hotlines, to specialist support services, to crisis centers, to legal assistance. So it really makes it clear that violence against women and domestic violence is not a private or a family matter, but it's a criminal behavior that should not be shielded and that should not be subject to impunity. That's for us, and that's why at EU level we have proposed even for the EU to accede to this convention, because we think it would really offer us a framework which allows this to tackle this shadow pandemic, as it's called now in COVID-19, in a manner which is comprehensive comprehensive together with the member states.
Yeah, I think this is such a huge issue. I mean, I've read so many reports and actually done some reporting myself on the issue of domestic violence throughout the pandemic. I mean, lockdowns were obviously not easy for anyone, and you know, tensions were heightened in the home. But it is, as you say, a criminal matter. I just want to say to our viewers, please share this video onto your Instagram pages. You can join the conversation as well. You can send us comments as questions. Tell me who you want them to direct, who you want me to direct them to, whether it's Francis, Karen, or Daniele, and I will try and put as many to them as possible throughout this Instagram live. We'll probably go somewhere for about 25 minutes to half an hour from now in our discussion. So I'll turn to you, Francis. What can the EU do within the framework of this convention to protect women and girls? How important is this convention in those protections for people like you, lawmakers?
Oh, it's very important for lawmakers because, as has been said, it's the gold standard. It's the guide for the member states on how you deal with violence against women. And as we know, during COVID, there's been a 30% increase across all of our member states. It's quite extraordinary. And worldwide, of course, it's an extremely serious problem. And it's really disappointing for somebody like me who's been working on this issue for many years, probably over 20 years. And I actually thought as people became, you know, better educated, as young women, young men were exposed to, you know, better information about, you know, better sex education and so on, that we would see a decrease. In fact, we're seeing that it's a really insidious problem with 62 million women across the EU from the age of 15 experiencing some form of physical or sexual violence. So what we can do, we have to have a map, a plan to decrease these numbers and eliminate them. And what you see in the convention, it tells governments the series of interlocking kind of initiatives that would make a difference. And these would range from strong legislation, you know, criminal sanctions, criminal, you know, sentences, and ways of bringing people to court, dealing with issues, for example, like coercive control, making sure that governments run awareness campaigns. I was Minister for Justice in Ireland, making sure that we train, for example, our police forces to recognise signs, to have the appropriate responses. So it's a menu of activities that governments need to implement, and once they ratify, once they sign up and ratify, then they are bound not just to sign a piece of paper or ratify it, but to take action. It's about action in our member states, and the EU, of course, will be pushing for that in its gender equality strategy and in all the work that the EU does with the member states. Unfortunately, Jack, those 6 countries have not signed up yet within the EU, and that's very disappointing, and others are threatening to withdraw. So that tells you a very serious story about how it's viewed in these countries.
I'll stay with you then, Francis. Explain to us those 6 countries that haven't signed up. Why have they not? What are the issues, and what can be done to force them to?
Well, I don't, you know, we can't actually force, but what we can do is continually highlight how important this is. They probably have slightly different reasons. But at the end of the day, what I would say is that if you're not signing up to this international framework that is about reducing violence against women, gender-based violence, sexual violence, what's the message you're giving to your citizens? So, you know, it's political will is lacking. Our Council of Ministers has to put pressure on every time they meet leaders. We all have to. They meet leaders from these countries, really ask them to explain why they're not signing up. We saw recently, for example, Turkey withdrawing. You know, what a disappointment for the women of Turkey. And what does it say to those women and to women around the world? So it is about, I suppose, how do you get it to the top of the political agenda? I'm almost amazed that it isn't at the top of the political agenda because, you know, psychologically and personally, violence wreaks havoc in individuals, in women's lives and in family lives. So it's about persistence at EU level, really pushing at council level, at commission level, to encourage the member states to ratify, and so that the EU can then do even more to push the agenda we need to reduce violence.
Indeed. So as Francis was saying, we've had 6 countries that are, I haven't got. I'm trying to find the list, and I can't find those exactly.
Yes, I have the list here if you want me to
I've
give it
been
to you.
scrolling
Yes.
through my phone. If you've got it, can you just say them and then
Yeah,
we'll put the question?
Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, and Slovakia.
Thank you so much. You saved me, Francis. I was just scrolling through my notes and couldn't find it. So those are the countries that haven't ratified, Daniele. But also we're hearing Poland saying it wants to potentially pull out. As Francis was saying, Turkey has withdrawn from this convention. All of them saying that it basically opposes traditional family values. How can you at the Council of Europe persuade countries to stay within it? What is necessary to make people realize that protecting women and girls from domestic violence is sort of crucial? I mean, it sounds sort of counterintuitive to say that, but how do you, as a body, make sure countries stay within it?
Well, we are trying different things to that respect, and I think this is indeed one of the most crucial points that we have to discuss and to face in this moment. In addition to those 6 states which are members of the European Union, there are a few other states who are members of the Council of Europe, so in a wider context, that also have not ratified the Istanbul Convention. And the arguments we hear are always very similar. There is a certain often matter of concern from governments to bring a draft ratification bill to their parliaments to discuss accession to a convention that, as you say, should be intuitive for everyone to be a party to and to be convinced about. One thing that we have not yet faced, or that Francis briefly mentioned before, is this question of this alleged and completely unfounded connection which is made between the Istanbul Convention and sort of threats to traditional family values. Now, how can we face that? It's difficult from the point of view of an organization which is based mostly on rights and on more legal arguments to enter into this kind of debate which touches much deeper points in public opinion, in personal feelings, etc. But we really need to have to do that. We need to try to put clarity and to bring simply the facts on the table, because all these arguments are in reality completely unfounded. And there are not only us who can tell and explain that just because we are supposed to be the defenders of the convention, but there is already 10 years of practice of this convention. There is already many reports that have been produced that show what the convention really can change into the life of women, into legislation, etc. And can clearly show also that all these matters, all these concerns are unfounded, because in no place the convention has, for instance, led to complete abandoning of traditional practices, or not even to the introduction. Very often there is this sort of antagonism which is created with LGBTIQ plus rights. The convention does many things, requires many things, but it does not require to introduce same-sex marriage or civil partnership in countries. And the proof is many states who are parties to the convention have simply not done that, and probably do not plan to do that. But still, these arguments are brought on the agenda by the opponents to the convention, and they seems to resonate in a number of countries. So
a rogue earbud. Yeah, this is really true as well. I mean, I actually went reporting. I did a report a couple of years ago on the Istanbul Convention and its implementation in Finland, and I spoke to Finnish authorities who said it had massively helped them restructure the way that they protect women. And I met a woman who was a victim of domestic violence, and there's a clear link in the ability to restructure countries' legislation. So, Karen, one of the other issues, though, obviously with domestic violence, and this does relate to the pandemic as well, we know that 1 in 10 women experience online harassment. There's a huge phenomenon. We're losing. Oh no, she's still there. Karen's still there. There's a phenomenon.
I'm still there, but I see that my battery is lowering. So
That's okay.
I will have to put.
Okay, if you need to,
Okay,
if you
ahead.
need to unplug your headphones and just plug in your thing, that's okay. It normally works anyway. We can hear you.
Okay.
I'll keep going. If you need to, do you need to do that now? Do you need to move and go somewhere?
No, go
to do
ahead.
It? Oh, we're losing her. Okay. I'll move on. I have that question, but we'll let Karen sort of reconnect to us. So I'll move back on to you. Oh no, we've got Karen again. There we go. This is pretty good technical issues though. I was more worried about this. So they're saying women are, you know, massively persecuted, you know, massively chased after online, much more than men. I can say this from my female colleagues as journalists, like they get so much more, many more attacks. How are the existing tools that we have at our disposal to tackle this kind of issue? How are they prepared? How do we use them to prevent this kind of thing?
Yeah. You asked about online violence, yeah, because you fell away on certain points. Yes.
Precisely,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's online violence truly is including misogynist hate speech. I think it's something which was already on the rise for a couple of years, but and we have really data showing. I think we have a study of young women and girls globally suffer from violence online. And we see also that it hits women and girls particularly, but it also hits particular groups of women, like for instance, women politicians, like for instance, women journalists. So we see that it really hits a lot of people. And the internet, of course, it creates this kind of additional dimension to the offline, but it creates this additional dimension of amplification and anonymity, which you get when people get online, which means that this kind of misogynist attacks, they somehow dissuade women from going into or becoming politically active and from engaging even in political discourse, which is a problem not only from a gender equality perspective, but simply also from a democratic perspective. Now, do our current tools allow us to attack it? I think we see that there are quite some gaps. And I think that's why the Commission proposed already in December of last year, the proposal for a Digital Services Act, which is currently pending and which deals with the responsibility of online platforms in handling illegal online content, which is directed against women and girls. And we are currently also in the preparations of our new initiative, which we are preparing for the end of the year. We are also looking at where the gaps are at the national level. And we see that most of the gaps are in this area, in the area of online violence. So that's why we will probably include this into our initiative. And another initiative that the Commission is taking at the same time is about hate speech and hate crime, both online and offline. So this also includes misogynist hate speech and hate crime. So I think that we can see that the existing tools do not suffice to protect women and girls online clearly, and that probably more action is needed.
So when we talk about that action, Francis, Karen, if you need to plug your phone in, go and do it now. I'll leave you for a second.
It should be plugged in, so I hope it works.
Live streams just absolutely drain phone batteries. So so Francis, I'll move on to you. There is this huge issue. We know it. There's no question about it. What do you kind of think that the Istanbul Convention or countries putting it into their national legislation, how does that need to happen now? Where do we go from here? We've had 10 years where there's been this international agreement within the human rights body of the Council of Europe. What do we do with this now? Because it's been 10 years and not saying that the convention isn't all-encompassing, but the problem certainly doesn't go away.
Yes, well, it's an enormous question, Jack. I mean, it brings up so many issues around, online harassment, the need for stronger regulation. Online really was a bit of a Wild West. That's changing. I brought in legislation myself where you would criminalize those who would groom children online. I've seen great work being done in relation to dealing with, for example, child sex abuse and the online elements of that. And all our police forces are getting better at dealing with that. I think in the same way, we're going to have to deal with the online harassment of women. And we're going to have to work with the companies, with the online providers. We're really, we'll have to accelerate action in that area. But then also what we have to do, I mean, the Istanbul Convention says what you ought to do and what you can do, and it's been proven will help. But then you've got to put the resources behind it. It's one thing to say we really want to deal with violence against women and gender-based violence, but actually you may need more refuge places, although ideally you would have legislation that would remove the perpetrator from the home. That's the way you should go, as opposed to women and children leaving the home. But that needs resources. It needs resources in all our member states, and it needs resources, nationally, to have enough places to have our police responding appropriately. It's taken quite a long time for police forces to really respond. It was seen as a private matter, and there's still elements of that. But you have seen enormous changes in the way, as I've said already, police forces react now and deal with it as a criminal activity and make far more serious interventions. So, it's about the resources. Now, our NGOs have been to the fore. The non-governmental organisations across our member states have done amazing support, awareness raising, highlighting the need for legislation, suggesting changes to legislation, being support group for women, because it's one thing to stop the gender-based violence, then it's another thing to recover and to build a life again with your family. So the NGOs need the resources to do that, so governments have to support them, and that's part of the Istanbul Convention. So I think it isn't any one thing, it's about accelerating all of these issues. And of course, the big issue now that has accelerated domestic violence is alcohol and drug use. So, I mean, it plays, these macro issues that we're dealing with that make for very unstable, relationships and family situations. These are all, feeding in to the shadow, pandemic that we're seeing in relation to domestic violence. And of course, we need male champions. I would say that. It's great to see more and more men speaking about this. Young men who are calling it out in universities, working with young women. You see in Africa, in Nairobi, I saw young men working to eliminate female genital mutilation, working with NGOs, working with women. I think as we have these male champions in relation to this issue, that gets the message across, very well to younger men. So, it has to become utterly unacceptable amongst peer groups of males that you have this sort of violence. And we do hear some disturbing reports from our universities. And that's why I think, for example, the issue of consent in our universities really needs to be highlighted in our society generally. So it's all of these things coming together. But it's a society saying, we take this seriously. This is not good enough, that we are still experiencing these levels of violence. So it is a societal issue as well.
Certainly. So, Daniele, I'll move on to you. I mean, a pretty similar question. What are you doing with this convention going forwards? Have you got programs to try and, like we said, Francis just listed a litany of still major issues in universities, police and police involvement in this. Actually, not to go back to it too much, but when I was in Finland, that was one of the issues, trying to connect the social services to the police. What are you guys doing at the Council of Europe? How are you engaging with countries to improve the situation going forward?
Yes, thank you. We engage at different levels. First of all, of course, there is the pure monitoring of the convention. So you're familiar with that. There is this expert body which produces reports on the basis of visits, etc., on the implementation of the convention as a whole. That's the GREVIO, the group of experts on violence against women and domestic violence. Now, after a GREVIO produces a report, of course, states are expected to take action to implement these reports. And this is also where we try to intervene and provide support to states by supporting them, for instance, through training programs for some categories, like you mentioned, police forces, social workers, the judiciary, lawyers, etc., to familiarize them with the recommendations that have been produced and to help the different authorities to implement these recommendations. So our services not only limited to give them the guidance, but also to try to help them putting in practice this guidance, so that the next time that when we will go back to the countries, we can see some concrete improvements in that. And indeed, this worked very well for the Istanbul Convention from the beginning of the process. Of course, there was a huge wave of measures that all states took at the moment in which they decided to adhere to the convention, to become parties to it, and to prepare themselves, their legislation, their practices and everything for the compliance with the convention. But the Istanbul Convention sets a very high level of standards, which is virtually very ambitious to achieve in all aspects. So if you look at the Grevio reports, you will always find areas for improvement for all states in different moments. But then, when the visit of Grevio is coming and a report is going to be published, that is another very important moment in which a state takes measures and reacts to what we provide. And parliaments, for instance, also have a very important role in supporting this, in making the reports of Grevio in a given country visible, disseminated, and most of all, put in practice. So this is for us also a very important moment. And finally, a few years after the report are produced, we also provide a sort of assessment which is done through the Committee of the Parties, which is the other body that monitors the convention, where all the governments of member states sit, so not experts, but really the governments of member states, all together discussed the implementation and made some assessment on compliance. So if you want, the Council review from this point of view makes a sort of full service to the states which are party to the convention of that. But we don't do this alone. We do this with great support, first of all, from the European Union, also as a donor to many of our projects in the country, in the field. We do it through our experts, through our network of experts, which is very often based also very much on the support from civil society, from associations who work in the country, who have produced best practices, and which we try this way to disseminate.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, I asked people to ask questions, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but for me at least, they are quite a lot of them are in Italian, and that is
it's not even Italian. I believe what I read there.
Okay,
it looks like Romanian, or I don't know what.
I'm not gonna even attempt them because to monitor them. But if anybody does have a question in English, unfortunately, I mean I can speak other languages, but I think it's easier because our conversation is in English. Please feel free to drop them in, and we'll get to them if we can. So just turn to you, Karen. Actually, your big boss in the European Commission, the President Ursula von der Leyen. She recently spoke in the European Parliament, talking about this specific issue, talking about Turkey withdrawing. She also we understand that by the end of the year, she's going to propose legislation to combat violence against women online and offline. And we understand, some sort of public consultation that's going to happen. Can you explain all of this to us? Can you tell us what's going on and what we can expect?
Yes, of course. I mean, first, I would like to stress that we remain committed to acceding to the Istanbul Convention. So
as the EU,
as EU, we remain committed, and we have a proposal pending. It's currently pending in the Council, and we hope that the talks and the negotiations on that proposal will pick up again after the summer, when we will have received the input from the Court of Justice on the institutional questions relating to this accession. So that's still remains our priority. Now, at the same time, we see, and the President has expressed this, the urgency of the matter. Yeah, so we don't want to wait to see what will happen to the EU's accession to the Istanbul Convention and the accession of those 6 member states that have not yet completed their ratification. And so what we are doing indeed is we're preparing ourselves new legislation which basically aims, or would aim at, achieving the same objectives as the Istanbul Convention. So it would provide for prevention, protection, prosecution of specific types of gender-based violence. So we are preparing this. At the same time, we are also preparing, as I mentioned, this initiative on making a new EU crime on hate crime and hate speech, including on the basis of gender. So these 2 initiatives will be prepared as a package, and they will be presented by the end of the year. You're right, there is a public consultation ongoing. Actually, it closed yesterday.
Okay.
So we have received quite a large amount of contributions, with more than 600 contributions from everywhere. But of course, I mean, we keep open for receiving any further input of who wants to give this. So this was an open public consultation, but we have also targeted consultations of member states, of international organizations, of social partners, of civil society organizations like Francis mentioned, who are very active on the ground in offering help and assistance to victims of gender-based violence. So all this is ongoing, and we hope to present the initiative indeed by the end of the year.
Thank you so much, Karen. So we're actually running out of time here a little bit. So what I'm going to do is give the floor. I'll just give the floor to each of you just to give a sort of overview statement, a feeling about exactly what's going on. I'm sorry that we haven't been able to go any further than this, but perhaps I'll start with you, Francis. Your hopes and your aspirations, sort of blue sky thinking about how we can tackle this issue.
Well, I suppose the first thing to say is that this convention is not a Trojan horse for anything else. It is about dealing with this terrible epidemic in our society of violence against women that destroys lives, and that we really have to have the best possible plans at national level to eliminate it. I think we need to have the goal in Europe to be the first continent to eliminate it. That has to be the vision, because the damage is so serious and it destroys lives, it kills people, and it, psychologically just destroys people. So I really hope that the countries who are really not ratifying it, that they will move towards it, that we'll have a united approach across Europe to eliminate violence against women. That's my hope. And I think the pathways are there as to how we can do this. We've just got to accelerate our actions right across Europe and make sure there is great public awareness about this and how we can eliminate it.
Mm-hmm. Daniele, are you positive? Are you hopeful? Do you think we can work on this in the coming years?
Of course I am. I think we have already reached a lot of things. We can certainly say that the Istanbul Convention has put the attention, including by the public and the media, squarely on the matter of violence against women. And it has made it crystal clear that preventing this, protecting victims and ending impunity is an obligation of the state to give meaning to the human rights of women. This is, for me, extremely important. And all the reforms that have been put in place in the states which are a party to it are a testimony of this and of the effectiveness of the Istanbul Convention. But now, if we turn to those who are unsure about how to move ahead, because they perhaps fear giving the anti-gender movements an occasion to contest any move towards the convention, it is important to support them, to prepare the ground, to involve all stakeholders, public, private, etc., to take the time and to make the effort to explain the aims of the convention and embed it all in a wider human rights approach, because this is what we are talking about in the end. And it will help to invest in peer-to-peer outreach, pair up parliamentarians with parliamentarians, governments with governments, civil society with civil society, to learn from each other and really use all these years of experience that we have to support each other and to reach wider ratification of the convention.
Yeah, everything like this, crossing borders, talking to one another, just improves. A society where women are protected and raised up is a better society for everyone. Karen, just some final thoughts from you before we wrap the live up. Are you positive that the work that the Commission is doing and the Istanbul Convention, these sort of two things, can have a good effect?
Yes, of course I am. And I think the gender equality strategy sets out so many actions on violence against women, not only these legislative actions, but also non-legislative actions. We are creating a prevention network. We are setting up cooperation with IT platforms. We are preparing a recommendation on harmful practices against women and girls. So many, many things. And I think the strategy gives a real good framework for our action during the mandate of this commission. There is one thing that I think that we didn't get completely in the strategy, which is. Can you hear me?
Yeah, tell us. Yeah,
okay.
No, I'm interested.
Which is that in the strategy, we were putting this objective of having like a Europe where women and girls are free from violence. And the more I work on this, the more I realize that actually that's not enough. What we need is a Europe where women and girls are free from fear for violence, because that really affects, you don't need percentages there, that really affects half of the population. And that's what we need to do vis-a-vis our citizens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's utopian, but it's also fundamental, it feels, right? That women should be protected. Guys, I think we have to wrap it up. There's so much more we could talk about, I think, but I know that our time has run out and you guys have your evenings to run off to. Thank you so much, Francis. Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you so much, Daniele. This has been technologically much more successful than I hoped it was going to be. And as far as the discussion, really, really interesting as I was expecting. I thank you so much, and I wish you a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
evening. Bye now. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.